Welcome, everybody, to the D-Absolute and Salesforce webinar on oil and gas, a look at field service. Today's speakers are Jason Olbikson, who is the Global Industry Director for Oil and Gas at Salesforce, and Brian Burns, Vice President of Professional Services and Customer Solutions at D-Absolute. So I'll hand it over to Brian Burns, who will talk about our agenda.
Hi, my name is Brian Burns with D-Absolute. We'll talk about specific industry use cases that we've seen in working with our customers, and some of the motivations and benefits of those use cases. And then more specifically, we wanted to show one of the solutions, one of those use cases, up and running on the Salesforce Salesforce field service solution. So we'll be talking about the water hauling solution, and we'll walk you guys through an overview of that use case in detail, and then a live demonstration in a system, SFS system. We'll talk about where that was, that customer success story tied to that use case, and then at the end we'll do a Q&A. So without further ado, I will hand this over to Jason. Please go right ahead, Jason.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you giving me the opportunity. Happy and excited to partner with D-Absolute on this. So Jason Olbikson, I'm our industry go-to-market director for oil and gas, which means I'm ultimately responsible for our go-to-market strategy for the segment. So I've been in this role, I've been at Salesforce for 6 years, working across our oil and gas practice, energy practice. If you go to the next slide, Brian, I just wanted to spend a little bit up front and just talk about what Salesforce does in energy. So we're really proud to have been driving customer success for about 20 plus years in energy, and that's across the value chain. So for us, when we think about our energy practice, it's upstream, field service, midstream, downstream refining and sales, all the way to retail fuels. And in fact, at Salesforce, our energy practice is one of the fastest growing businesses, one of our fastest growing industry segments. Two big logos I wanted to call out here with respect to field operations is BP, who does a lot with our technology around field operations or operator rounds. So they really wanted to digitally capture and collaborate on all the routine maintenance kind of operator rounds coming out of SAP plant maintenance and other back-end legacy systems into a single engagement layer, and they're leveraging our technology for that. The other one is EQT, who does a lot of with our technology around asset management. So they've actually configured an end-to-end asset management process in Salesforce to streamline the process from operation schedules to well data, to predictive analytics, to R&D science, governance, inventory, maintenance, permitting, and construction. So you think about the entire execution of an upstream operation, that's all being powered on Salesforce. If you go to the next slide, I wanted to just quickly highlight some of the industry trends we're seeing. Is when we talk to our 1,000 plus customers about digital, what we're really seeing is a push towards augmenting the traditional process-centric approach with a people-centric lens. So I think the industry is really starting to realize that the digital optimization approach is really critical for some of the following reasons. The workflows needs to be better enabled to be productive. Ecosystem of partners, so when you think about engaging beyond the firewalls, and the example we're going to talk about today is with water haulers, they need to be better enabled to optimize efficiency. Work needs to be driven by information, not gut intuition. Connectivity integration are really table stakes nowadays. Silos are no longer tolerated. Tools need to be agile, proactive. I think they need to provide a great user experience when we talk about retaining and acquiring new talent. And essentially what this means when we talk to our customers is taking friction out of the organization. So if you can make people more productive and efficient, you can really empower them, or excuse me, if you empower them, you can make them more efficient and productive and really take friction out of the organization. And what that means is reducing cost. So if you go to the next slide, Brian, I think, that all sounds great, but it's really hard to do. And achieving business agility and enabling that connected experience across the ecosystem is oftentimes inhibited by legacy systems, whether it's a production accounting system, ERP system, procurement, maintenance, whatever. Information can be all over the place, and it's really difficult to provide that single holistic view. But I think a new stakeholder-centric approach and the right technology can really help reduce friction and improve the digital experience. So when you have that legacy information in silos, locked away, not speaking, I think technology, when you talk about kind of an engagement and simple execution layer on top of that I know D-Absolute is going to talk about in a little bit, can really be important for achieving that business agility. And then finally, I just wanted to give like, this is the commercial, so to speak, of like where Salesforce plays in oil and gas. So when we talk about Salesforce in oil and gas, we talk about kind of Salesforce 360, which allows companies to leverage a single source of truth to connect stakeholders, employee assets across the value chain. A lot of people, when they think of Salesforce, they think of CRM. Upstream, in particular, doesn't really have customers. They sell in a long-term contract. So there are a lot of times you're saying, well, where's the value prop for us? And I think it's really taking that broader lens of digitizing the engagements with your assets, your employees, your stakeholders, whether joint venture partners, suppliers, contracts, et cetera. And when we talk to our energy customers across the globe about digital execution, some of the common themes we see are engaging the stakeholders to build trust, break down those silos, foster collaboration. We talk a lot about streamlining field operations and predictably managing assets. That's what we're going to really get into today with the Absolute. Empowering the workforce is another component of that. Enhancing customer engagement is kind of the CRM aspect, not really applicable when you talk about field operations or what we're going to talk about today. But what is applicable is things like making decisions based on data. So driving, data-driven decision-making, leveraging analytics, AI, data visualizations, et cetera, that can really be embedded in that operations process. And then the last slide, if you want to double click there, Brian, I just want to make sure everyone, in the audience knows that when we talk about streamlined field operations, if you can, field service is what we're going to talk about today. And I'm really excited, but I think it's much broader than that. So it's real-time visibility and schedule optimization for sure, but it's also about creating intelligent mobile-first workplaces, maximizing productivity, enhancing safety, digital project planning and execution. So when you think about lowering operator risk, accelerating timelines, integrated asset planning, things like that. And then also digital onboarding and enablement. So how do you ramp up field workers faster, whether they're inside your organization, outside your organization, to help you spend less? So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian. Really excited to hear what they're going to talk about with respect to field service and how the industry is moving to digitize that process. So thanks for the opportunity, Brian.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you very much, Jason. So I'll start off just talking a little bit about dAbsolute, and so dAbsolute, we're for those that don't know, we're a Salesforce Gold consulting partner. We've been in business for about 15 years, and the core focus of our business has been on, let's say we call it the Click software products. Click software, as many of you know, it was purchased about a year ago by Salesforce. So we've quickly embraced, obviously, that relationship with Salesforce. And we also had dAbsolute historically had a Salesforce practice that we started about 8-9 years ago. So we've got, the important thing to note is that we've got 15 years, right, of focusing in on field service. And me personally, myself, have been doing this for about 20 years. And we focus at a broad array of industries. Oil and gas is one. We've got several customers, several operators that we've been working with over the last 2-3 years. And some of those things we're going to talk about today specifically. But what's important about field service is we bring to the table all of this experience and learnings from other industries that we've implemented successfully. And really helped our customers drive value out of these tools, out of the solutions, coming in with the right angle on process, technology, data, and then, Jason mentioned it, about being able to leverage that data, right, to make business decisions. So that's what dAbsolute's all about. And, so field service, field service is number one for us. Okay. So I just wanted to mention that. And then you can take a look at that. We've got a pretty broad array of customers that we work with as well. Many in the energy field, and I'll move on to my next slide. Thinking about energy, right? We've got the oil and gas industry, part of the overall energy industry. And we have customers in that space, but we've got customers all the way from, the oil coming out of the ground, whether it's a well or a, in the ground, oil coming out of the ground, or oil coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, with Anadarko and Oxy, who we work with. And then we've got midstream operators, and then, pipeline guys. And then we've got, we're working with, the energy producers, right? The electric utility providers, the gas providers, and then all the way into the home, what we like to call the burner tip. So we've got experience all across the energy distribution chain. And like I said earlier, we take this experience and, there may not be, let's say conventional use cases in the oil and gas industry. There certainly are, and we'll talk about all those in a minute. But there's definitely some non-conventional use cases that we focused on as well, and we've been able to find and deliver, pretty incredible value, to our customers, with our experience approach and the way we drive and deliver projects. At a higher level in the field service business, these are some of the things that we see, right? If you think about where's the value going to come from, there's definitely value in having a better process, having better tools, but there's also better value delivered, through bottom line savings. And those savings come in the form of a few of these things we've got listed up here, right? The amount of effort, time it takes to actually manage the work, manage the workforce, we call it dispatch effort, planning and scheduling. We've seen reductions of that upwards of 50%, right? In that effort. And what does it mean? It doesn't mean those folks, they don't have to go find something else to do somewhere else. It means that their time is going to be able to be used more valuably, right? In the organization. For the operators, for the people going out and doing the maintenance and doing the the reactive work, right? Through the life cycle, we see an increase in wrench time. So less time driving, less time looking for parts, more time focused on getting the work done. And then we've also seen that, we're also reducing, the dependency or the cost of contractors, travel time, obviously, maintenance on trucks, maintenance on vehicles, maintenance on equipment, and then obviously the fuel cost that goes with it. And then what we'll talk about a little bit later, the cost takeout opportunities, they're there. Like if you really just need to think about it, take a step back, look at the business. What can we really do? Where do the problems really sit? And then work, and then we've worked with our customers to say, okay, fine, we think we can go find, opportunities to take out cost of a process, or the delivery of a service. So that's really what you're looking for when you're thinking about field service. There's a lot more to it, but these are just the ones I wanted to mention today. So when we first got into working with oil and gas customers, and like I mentioned, it was about 3 years ago. One of the first things that we always do is to try to understand our customers. It's really important. Every industry is different. The way people think, the way people talk, the terminology, the meaning. So it's really about understanding people. And so one of the big things is obviously keeping the oil coming out of the ground. Like that's really important. It sounds like a simple thing, but part of that would be keeping the most oil coming out of the ground. An example is if you've got a bunch of wells and you've got an alarm going off, well, which alarm are you going to react to, right, from an operations perspective? So it's understanding that, hey, all alarms are not equal, right? Because that well may be old and maybe it's not a high producer, but you actually want to go, you have your team react and go to the well that, hey, this one's only 6 months old and it's, it's still producing, 300, 400, 500 barrels a day. So when an alarm goes off, that's where we need to go first, right? And then the lower producing wells, those would be lower in priority. So that's an example of, understanding the customers, understanding the business problem that we need to solve. And these are the things what I've, up on the screen, there's lots of local knowledge in industry. There's you guys like to move fast. I will say personally, in the oil and gas space, we work with all kinds of different customers across different verticals. In the oil and gas space, moving quickly is key. Every engagement, every project I've been on and my team's been on and delivered, it's about moving fast. It's about being agile, and it's about keeping the guys that are going to use the solution happy, right? Because if they don't like it, they're not going to use it. So keeping things simple, right? Whether it's the back office process with the schedulers and the planners, right? Or it's the folks in the field, you've got to add value to their lives. You've got to make their lives easier. So that's always a key tenet, when we engage, right, in this space. Just wanted to go through a little bit, we talked about understanding the customer. It's also what about pain points, right? When we look at the different industries and the verticals that we play in, a lot of these are similar, but some of them are unique, right? So health and safety is something that's really important across all the industries that we serve. And things like, hey, if I'm out working alone in the middle of a field and nobody hears from me for 2 hours, I need, we need, something needs to happen, right? Somebody needs to come and help. There's pre-site safety checklists, there's panic situations that can happen. So just think about health and safety pain points. Those things need to be addressed as part of a good field service solution. And, pieces and mechanisms and processes need to be in place to support that. Digitization is important, getting rid of manual processes, eliminating missing and inconsistent data. And the great thing is as you get better at this, you get better at resolving those kinds of issues. People talk about AI and machine learning and all those things, but those technologies and tools are only as good as the data that you feed into it. So if you're feeding bad data into those advanced technologies, right, that everybody talks about, the results of that, your opportunity to benefit from it as you adopt more and more of that, it will improve as you correct more of your data issues. There's cost takeout inventory opportunities, inventory and parts, management and working with third-party vendors, further optimizing processes, and really just vendor checks, having checks and balances on your vendors as well. And we'll talk about that when we talk about that water hauling example in a little bit. And then lastly, sorry, I just need to keep clicking. The control and management of field resources and activities, that's really what we're focused on today to talk about. And this, there's a lot here, right? There's, lack of visibility and control, right? If you're going from a paper-based process, to a solution, that supports these activities, you actually achieve a lot, the visibility and control that you really never had. The ability to prioritize. It gave you that example of which well do we need to go to, right, to service. What's the most meaningful, a job to go to now with all the demands that we've got coming in, right? And really being able to select the right one. And then obviously eliminating that manual management of scheduling and planning. So those are just some of the things, right, from a pain point perspective that we see. I'll go through this slide relatively quickly. We also talked to our customers about what's going on in 2020. I think we're all fully aware of, what kind of year it's been and what's going on in our personal lives and our work lives. But in the oil and gas space, we've heard, obviously saving cash is a huge priority. And it's not to say saving cash isn't a priority every year, but even more so, right, as, given what's going on in industry. We also noticed that businesses, operators are willing to do more, right, because of what's going on. Maybe there's not as much money to spend on it, but if there's a really compelling use case, there's a really compelling, business problem or business challenge that you want to solve, and it's going to help, right, save cash, then there's more impetus and more focus on actually moving forward with the project. From a return on investment, if something can return within the same budget cycle, we're seeing a lot of movement on that front, but even something that returns, let's say in 12 to 24 months. But if you're looking at doing something that's going to have an ROI of 5 or 10 years, then, that's probably not something folks want to talk about. And then the focus really is still about solving business problems, right? You guys, are in industry, what kind of challenges that you've got. So still solving those and making people's lives easier is really, really important. But also, helping out with the bottom line, bringing efficiency to process, and making people's lives easier. It's very, very important. And then overall, at a higher level, just staying the course into digital transformation. Every operator, every oil and gas company is going through some, digital transformation, project, and there's a vision and a strategy that goes with that. And really just making sure that what's going on is lined up underneath that longer term vision that companies have. And I'll just throw it out there really quickly. And if you want to reply in the chat window, or if you want to unmute, are there any other priorities for folks that are on the phone that you might want to share with us? Love to hear it.
While we're waiting for that, Brian, I'll chime in here. Based on what I've seen with some of our other customers, what I think was missing here is just the whole energy transition and the move towards sustainability. And which is really interesting to me as we see, especially the super majors get into renewables, whether it's wind or solar. There's a lot of similarities around the field service component of servicing a windmill. It's very similar, running an asset program on an oil and gas well. So I think that's one of the key priorities I'm seeing across our customers.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Jason. All right, no worries. We'll move on to the next slide. So I just want to talk about, from a use case perspective, right? I mentioned earlier in the conversation, there's different use cases in the oil and gas industry that we're pretty familiar with, right? As a solution provider. And the first one is, and this one is actually a project that we have underway with one of our customers, is midstream, operations and maintenance. Okay. And you think about these motivations and benefits, they're very similar, right? As you look, from one use case to the next, but some can get a little bit unique too, right? So I'm not going to try to read them all, but a lot of things that people are focused on, right? Improved user experience, right? Whether it's the planners and the schedulers or the people using the tools in the field, that's always really, really important, right? Building a foundation for future improvement. Again, that's a theme, right? That we hear that, these operators, these companies, they're going from, let's say having nothing or having old systems that they used to a more advanced platform. And so it's really building, yes, foundationally, we want to solve these particular problems, but we also want to set things up for the future that we can build upon and improve even further. And we've seen that with many of our customers over the years. Providing that visibility specifically for midstream and a lot of the maintenance type work that happens in industry, if it's offshore or if it's onshore operations and maintenance. Visibility into the work backlog, right? Being able to see what the capacity is of your workforce, and then aligning that, right? Aligning the workload to the capacity, right? Having that capability and that feature is really important. And then the prioritization of work. Okay, so that's important, whether it's whether you're a midstream operator, you're working offshore, and then the other use cases, right? That for the onshore, for the maintenance and operations, and the the specialties under that, and then there's a couple different, right? I think the other ones I want to talk about, let's say, are the non-conventional use cases, right? And that would be, when we look at it, transportation, right? Under transportation, you've got water hauling, you've got sand, chemical, oil. And then there's another one that we're looking at with one of our customers about rental equipment and doing a better job of managing that, right? So there's a lot of motivations and benefits around that transportation segment, because a lot of it is, visibility and control. Before it was just the vendor would go out, pick up oil, drop off sand, pick up water, and then drop it off at the saltwater disposal facility. And then, 3 months, 4 months later, you'd get an invoice. There wasn't a lot of control over that process and visibility along the path. And these solutions, for that transportation services part of the business can really, bring some of those benefits to it. And then from a rental equipment perspective, right, operators have a lot of equipment out there. Is it being fully utilized? Where is it? Who's got it? So there's, we're looking at that with a few of our customers right now into what that could mean. And this is really just a reminder that, there's some non-conventional use cases out there where a field service solution could be a really good fit. And I'm just looking at the clock, so I'm just going to speed this up just a little bit. So we're going to talk about oil and gas, and we're going to talk about water hauling, right? And I think, most of the folks on the phone, on the meeting know what that is, right? It's really just about, picking up wastewater at a well site or at a facility, and then transporting that wastewater, to a disposal facility. It's a big expense for operators. Like I mentioned, there's that lack of control over the process, the lack of checks and balances, right, throughout that process. How much water was picked up? Who picked it up? When was it picked up? Do I have the ticket? Does the volume match, what we're being billed for? So lots of opportunity, right, to improve the process and to recover cost. And this last slide that I'll talk about before we're going to do a demo or review of the solution in the SFS platform. I just want to take you guys on a little bit of a deeper dive into the workflow, the water hauling workflow, and just talk about a few things to set the stage for what we're going to take a look at in just a minute. So from a water hauling perspective, right, we're at the well, right, we're at the tank location. Okay, and you've got the tank, and the tank's going to fill up, right? It's going to fill up with wastewater, and there may be a SCADA alarm, right, that goes off, and that SCADA alarm, will tell the back office systems that, hey, this tank is hitting, we need someone to come and pick up water. So that job will get created, right? It'll get created in let's say the ERP system or the asset system. And that job will flow over as a work order into the field system, right? In this case, into Salesforce Field Service Solution. Okay. From there, that job, what happens there's a few things that actually are set up, right? In advance of all of these things happening. And one of them is you've got your vendors, right? You've got your hauling vendors, and then you've got your saltwater disposal facilities. And your vendors, depending on the area of the well or the facility, the tanks where they're going to be picking up water, you may have a preferred vendor for a given area. So when that order gets created, that need to go pick up water gets created, part of the solution is to match it, to say, well, if we're going to go do a pickup in this area, then it should match to this vendor that has better pricing, right, in that area. Okay, so that's one of the decision points that you can make and you can automate in the system that will help. The other thing is, and we'll talk about this one, I know, a little bit later, but I'll mention it now just to make sure I don't forget, is that the saltwater disposal facilities, right, and controlling and driving, the hauler to take it to the one that makes most sense. And the one that makes most sense may be the one that has the preferred rates, or it may be the one that is closest in proximity, to the well. And that may just sound like common sense, but what we've seen is that is not what was happening, right? By the contract vendors, right, that were doing the hauling. They would take it wherever they wanted to, for whatever reason, and maybe it made more sense. Maybe it was more profitable for them to bring it to, one disposal facility over another. So really controlling that part of the process is another step to save dollars. So what happens is after the order is created, it's actually pushed down to the hauling vendor. The dispatch manager receives the job. He takes a look at it, decides, okay, it's a request for 600 barrels of pickup. I need 4 trucks to go do that. I'm going to accept the job. The job is then dispatched out, or it's actually multiple jobs are dispatched out in the yellow box. The truck driver actually receives the job in the mobile device. They accept the job, they drive out, and all along this way, we're actually tracking all of those steps. The job's been accepted. I'm en route to the well. I've arrived at the well. I'm waiting at the well. I've picked up the water and I'm leaving the well. So that's what happens there in that first yellow box. And then the second yellow box really just talks about, now I'm on my way to the saltwater disposal facility. Same idea. I'm en route to the saltwater disposal facility. I've arrived at the saltwater disposal facility. I've unloaded. I've taken a picture of the ticket, and I've now completed the job. So here we are in the closeout. And this is really just about all of that information that we captured along the way, right, is now useful and valuable information that we have back in the customer systems that we can use, right, to do validations against invoicing and billing, streamline the process. And so there's a lot that was captured, and that control and visibility that I was talking about, it's all now documented, from the start to the beginning, from the start to the end of the process. So what we'll do now is we'll turn it over to Stephen, and he's going to walk us through a demo of this on the Salesforce Field Service Solution.
Thank you, Brian. Let me just bring up my screen here and please confirm when you see it.
So good.
We see it. Yep.
Thank you. So I'll just give myself a quick introduction here. So good day, everyone. This is Steven Sugumar from The Absolute. I'm a solutions consultant here with The Absolute, been with the company for over 6 years now. And today I'll be presenting our water hauling demo. So we're starting out here as the operator of the oil producer, and we're just taking a look at our Gantt. For demo purposes, we will be creating this request for a water hauling request here within Salesforce. We've achieved this by incorporating a global action. Hence, this really makes it easier for the operator to create a request from anywhere within the Salesforce platform. To do so, we just head up here to the top right corner, and we can see that we have two global actions. We have our water hauling request, as well as below, we have preventative maintenance tasks as well. For this demo, we'll focus on the water hauling request. This is going to give a prompt right here to fill in the details. But I just want to make sure, as Brian mentioned before, this request can be automated coming from a SCADA system. It could be coming from an ERP like SAP, where the ERP might have this as a reoccurring task. Let's say the well needs to be emptied out every 3 weeks. SAP would then control that reoccurring task, and the request would come here into field service automatically and be scheduled out to the preferred vendor or any other vendor selected by the operator. But again, for demo purposes, we're just creating this request right here within Salesforce. A couple of steps needed is first choosing our preferred vendor. We can see a list right here, and we're going to choose 123 Trucking. Next, it would be a contact for that water hauling company. In this case, I'll choose my name here representing 123 Trucking. We can see that the dates are actually auto-populated. The start date is today's date, December 9th, and current time, whereas the due date is going out by 3 working days. So this could be configurable, or it can be set up by region or something of that sort. We're going to go ahead here with the work type, and we can see at the top one is water hauling. And as I mentioned, we also have the reoccurring water hauling, filling, maintenance, and many other tasks as well. Here, we're going to focus on the water hauling. We can see it says 180. This is representing the duration in minutes, hence 3 hours. Finally, we will come out here for the well to select which well we want to do this water hauling request at. And again, we'll come out here to the 123 well. Most importantly, we do have to fill in the volume requested. And you can see this is required, represented by that asterisk right there. I'm going to come out here as the operator and type in 900 barrels. We have this vendor request down here checkbox, and this is really controlling some of the logic in the background to ensure that this request is sent only to 123 Trucking. Finally, giving this a save, this will then create the work order and send a notification out to the vendor 123 Trucking. We can see the request has been created successfully. We're just going to switch tabs here, and I'm going to give this a quick refresh. And now we're really switching perspectives, working as the water hauling vendor. In this case, the water hauling vendor will only be able to see their work or their work orders that have been assigned to them as the operator. So we can see here that these are all the work orders that have been presently sent to 123 Trucking. We're going to come out here and we're just going to take one of these. So this is the one that I created, work order 96. We can see the volume requested at 900, as well as the well 123. Opening up this work order, now we'll see what the hauling vendor needs to fill in to both accept this request and get working. First, they would have to change this status. We can see here that it is new. So I'm just going to use my edit and switch this over to accept. Scrolling down below, we can see some of our crucial information here, again, signified by this asterisk, mentioning that it is required. We can see that the operator is requesting 900 barrels. So we're going to go ahead and accept all 900. It's asking for what is the truckload volume. So 123 Trucking, their truckload here is 150 barrels per truck. So doing some simple math, we're going to need 6 truckloads to adhere to this water hauling request. We're going to give that a save. And this is now going to kick off some logic in the background to create each individual planned truckload, or what we can call tasks. Just going to scroll down just to show that here. We can see that we have 6 service appointments going from 307 to 312. This would be a specific task for each planned truckload carrying 150 barrels to complete the requested 900 barrels. Now, still keeping that perspective of the hauling vendor, we're going to come back here to the Gantt, and we're just going to grab one of those work orders that we just created, one of those tasks, and we're going to manually assign them to one of our truck drivers. I'll take 310 here, and we can see that we have 123 truck 1 online, and I'm just going to post it here for mid-Wednesday afternoon. Let go of that click, allow the system to then go ahead and schedule that work. We can also see that all the travel time, everything has been calculated correctly. And lastly, we just want to set this to dispatch so that the work is finally received down to the mobile device as the truck driver. Next, let me just pull up my mobile device here, and we're going to be taking the perspective of the truck driver. So opening up my mobile device, just entering in my passcode here. And we can see here that this is the Salesforce Field Service mobile application. I'm running this on my Android device, working as the truck driver. We can see that we just received that alert. We can see the notification just up top there that we have received a new work order task assignment. Checking at the top there, we can see the map view of our work. You can see out there that I'm located to the east, where the location of my work is out to the west. We could just take a quick overview of this. We can click the map, for example, and we can see that we should be going to that well in and around 2:15. Scrolling on to that specific task, it's also going to calculate that ETA. It's very important. We could see that 310 has been dispatched, and we can also see the longitude and latitude. A lot of these wells, they might be out in random locations without street addresses, so it's good to know that they may be geocoded through lat long, incorporating that travel time and directions as well. So coming back, we're now going to step into our work order to get some more information. Here again, we're going to see our map view with our ETA, as well as one-click driving directions. Again, simplicity is key here, making things easy for the truck driver. I can click that. This can open up Google Maps and direct me right into my turn-by-turn navigation. Just going to back out of here and returning to my app. Scrolling down, we also have our contact. So this is the contact of the well. In case there's any emergencies or issues, if we would like to call, message, or email them, we can do so straight from the app, making it very easy. Now we're just going to focus on the completion process taken by the truck driver. We're going to use our actions down here, and we're going to cycle through what we call the assignment form. This is first going to prompt them with a status change. They've just received this work. Their first step would be to accept the work. They can also reject the work, and this will then kick back the process out to the operator to either select a new truck driver or to select a new vendor if that is the case. But here we'll go with the accept. We can see here it's just giving some space here for the driver to enter in any comments as necessary, and we'll go with the next. So now that we've accepted this work, the next step is to actually travel out to the well site. So we'll select our travel to well status, and we are good to go. We assume we have now arrived to our well site, so we go ahead with the on-site at well status. Hitting next, we'll actually get step 2 in the assignment form. Now that we are there on-site at the well, the system is telling us that we are expected to pick up 150 barrels. So we'll go ahead as the driver and mention that we picked up the 150. Very important, we can see field ticket here, also with the asterisk as being required. So this is the ticket information coming from the well site, processing all of the transactions. So we can enter a ticket number here, for example, or any sort of unique identifier. If we would like to, we can put the beginning tank level. So perhaps maybe it was 900, and now taking out the 150, we're down at 750. We also have wait time in minutes. So again, just tracking all the checks and balances, making sure we're capturing every data point. We might have been waiting in line at the well and also filling up the barrels. So here we can simply enter 15 minutes. Lastly, for this status, we are going to take a picture, and I just have a sample ticket here from the field, just as a proof of receipt that we have completed the work, and grab the ticket information. We will go next, and now we are complete with our activities at the well. Hence, our next status would be traveling to the salt water disposal facility. Traveling to the SWD, we hit next, And again, we're presented with step 2. We've actually taken the time to incorporate logic here within the list of SWDs shown here to actually sort them and make it easy for the driver. This sorting is taking place through perhaps distance and, more importantly, cost measures. As the operator, we want to ensure that we keep costs down. So by sorting this list of SWDs, one, it makes it very easy for the driver to pick the first one. And secondly, and more importantly, again, it's tracking the checks and balances. So we're heading over to the Hydro Solutions SWD. Going on our travel, we'll assume that we finally arrived on site at our SWD, hence going on with this status. And again, being presented with step 2. Now just mentioning how many barrels we've disposed. So we picked up the 150, we've now disposed the 150, and again, capturing that ticket information. Entering all that in and perhaps taking another photo of the ticket for proof of receipt. Now we've completed our activities at the well site and we're finally okay to close off this one task as the driver by setting this task as completed status. This will then close off this one task as part of the higher work order. So in this case, we had 6 tasks within the work order. So the first one has been complete. When the other 5 have also been completed, it will automatically close off that work order. Just to confirm out here, we can see on the Gantt, the live updates have appeared, and we can see that the job 310 has now been completed. Moving on to the last portion of my presentation, we will take a look at reporting. Coming out to our home screen, this is where our operators will typically start their day as perhaps an operating manager or executive, just to make sure that business is running smoothly. These are a mix of both out-of-the-box reports as well as reports that we've configured specifically for water hauling. What I really want to point out here is these 2 reports. The first one being the average duration of a job, and we can see here that it is 171 minutes. At the beginning of the presentation, we saw that the default duration for water hauling jobs was 180 minutes or 3 hours. So seeing this green 171, it makes the operator very happy because we can see that we're very productive and performing better than our average. Similarly, we're looking at average travel time. We can see that we're in and around the 54.7 minutes of travel for the entire water hauling job. That includes traveling to the well as the SWD. Again, this is highlighted in green text just to show that this is above our average. We're doing better than we expected, hence showing off some configurability as well as dynamic reports to get that easy visual cue of how our business is doing. I thank you greatly for your time. It was my pleasure presenting to you, and I'm going to toss this back to Brian. Thank you.
All right. Stephen, thank you. Thank you very much. That was great. Just let me, I've got one more little bit of information I want to share with you folks. Just let me get my screen back up. Okay. So this use case that we just talked about, right? This water hauling use case.
Brian, sorry to interrupt, but I believe you're sharing the wrong screen.
Oh.
Yep. Presentation view.
Sorry. Let me correct that, folks. Thank you very much. Try it again. All right. I think this is it right here. This should be it.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you all. Yeah, so we just wanted to, to kind of close on this, right? Is that water hauling use case, if you think about, the industry that you work in, that you with the good things that go on, but there's always room to improve. And what we've seen in working with our customers is that, I mentioned it earlier, there's those non-conventional use cases, right? The operations and maintenance, right? For onshore, for offshore, that's a pretty typical use case, that we cover with our customers. But let's say those non-conventional use cases, and when we first started talking about this particular customer with this use case, it was not something we had done before, right? But this was with a large U.S.-based operator, right, located down there in Texas. They operate 4 different basins in the United States. And again, the water hauling solution, the cost, this is a big part of their business, a big cost for them. and they came to us and they said, hey, yeah, we're thinking about doing something here. You know, let's work on it together. Let's see what we can do. So we thought about it, and we came up with an approach and say, hey, let's do a pilot. So from an implementation perspective for this particular project, you know, we aligned to a budget, right? That the customer said, hey, this is what we're willing to, you know, to take a chance, right? We think there's benefit to be had. You know, we want to work with you guys based on your reputation and success, you know, in industry, in the field service industry. You know, but what can we do? So we've got a budget, we've got a vision, right? And we came up with a pilot project. So that was a 9-week project to go live. So we ran the project with them hand in hand with our customer. We leveraged our expertise in the field service space, and we built what we thought was a pretty innovative solution, right, for them. And the results of that implementation and that effort was, at the end of it, they ended up, we talked about it, they ended up with that visibility and control over the process, which they did not have before. They gained a lot of back office efficiencies, because of that, because of taking a lot of things that were happening on paper and in a bunch of disparate systems and kind of pulling it all together into one place. One of the really great parts of the story is the return on investment, right? I can't release the specific details of it, but it was measured in weeks and not 6 months, not a year, right? So the ROI from that initial investment to where they were after it went live, and then measuring in weeks out from there, the investment was recaptured really, really quickly. And then I mentioned this too, it's been a foundation, right, for that part of their business and other parts of their business. This solution, a field service solution and everything that goes with it, has been a foundation for further improvements, both in this use case, in the water hauling use case, and in other use cases as well, right? That are part of their business. The onshore operations and maintenance is one, and then we're looking at other ones as well. And just to pat our own back, we love our customers and working with them. That quote we've got right there, that they've said really nice things about us and very publicly up on the Salesforce App Exchange, and you got our partner exchange, and you guys can go look at that quote. And they gave us a very high rating for this. And then the financial savings, if a typical truck round trip, right, to go pick up and to drop off at the saltwater disposal facility, before it was taking roughly 6 hours, they were being billed 6 hours by their vendor for those jobs. That reduced almost immediately down to 4-hour round trip. And there's been other cost savings as well across the process and across the activities, right, involved. So I just wanted to share that with you a little bit about, what we showed you today is it's actually something that we've done with our customer, one of our customers, and it's a really great success story. So I'm gonna pause there. I know we've got about 10 minutes left in the meeting, and I think we just want to open it up. If there's for any questions that you folks may have, love to hear from you. And don't be shy. Okay. Well, look, yeah.
Hi, Brian.
Oh yeah,
Yasin
great.
here.
Yep, go ahead.
Actually, oil and gas is a new industry to me. My experience lies in electronics and manufacturing field service. So I was curious about this use cases and solutions. So it was a very good session indeed. So my question is just like purely from UI perspective. So I see there are a lot of screens where user has to select. So like, do you guys focus on like automating in future? Or like for example, the driver had to select the SWD where he will drop the salt water, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, that's a really good question. So thank you for raising it. I think in part of demoing a solution, Some of the actions and activities are manual, just to illustrate, what is happening across the process. But from when the order gets created in the system, that order creation at the front end of the process certainly is automated in the solution that we have today, that's up and running live with our customer, right? So those orders, they're coming in from another system, or they're created based on a schedule. Like, we know we need to go out to this well once a week or once a month to go pick up water, and there's a planned schedule where that pickup will be created. And then the selection of, we want to prefer this saltwater disposal facility based on this well location, that can come down pre-selected, right, in the application as well. But and that's a good thing. But there may be times where the truck driver knows that there's a backlog of other trucks dropping off at a given facility. So they also need the option to be able to go to another one, because the costs come from both, the time it takes to go do the job, but there's also wait time cost and things like that are taken into account. So there's still some vendor control on where they can go, but the preference of you should go to this facility, that's where we want to see you go, is it's not mandated, but it's recommended. And then if they decide to go to another facility, actually capturing why they went to a different facility would be something we could capture as well. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely, Brian.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just, only my point was, if driver has to make the decision manually, so there are chances for errors, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, the good thing about it is the list of saltwater disposal facilities, each well would have an approved list of disposal facilities. So just in that and of itself would prevent them from, let's say, making an error, going to one that is not approved, or that the operator just doesn't want them to use at all because it's just too far away, right? So it may make sense for the vendor to go to that one, but because of contracts and because of costs, here's the 3 or 4 that you can use. We prefer that you go to the first one, but if you have to go to the second or third one, that is okay. And it just depends how they would negotiate their contract with the vendor. Okay. All right. Are there any other questions? And look, what we will do is we'll feel free to follow up with us. We'd love to talk to any folks on the call today, about this use case or some of the other use cases that we talked about. But I'd just like to say, thank you to everybody for coming, and we look forward to seeing and talking to you soon. So take care and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.